Welcome back, my friends. My name's Gareth. This is Tech Check. So you've got your motherboard, you've chose your case, you've got all your different components, and then it comes to cooling. And you don't want to go an all-in-one route because you've only got a little bit of money left because you spent it all on your CPU and your GPU. That's exactly what you should do. But I've got this tower cooler here from Uphere. We're going to be using this in an up-and-coming build, so I thought I'd review it because we're so used to actually utilising the Ventru V6 and the Arctic Freezer 34. And whilst these are fantastic coolers and I think would be absolutely fine, I wanted to go another route. Still RGB, still a small form factor tower cooler, and still less than £30. So if you're interested, we're going to take a look at this, review it, test it out, and give you that approval. Is it actually worth it, or should you stick with these two? Let's do this. So straight out the gates, guys, this Uphere S5/S6 tower cooler cost me less than £30 here in the UK. If you're interested in this particular part and you're looking for a budget orientated RGB tower cooler, I'll leave a link down in the description below. But opening up the box, if I can get in it, there we go. Get out. There we go. What do we get? So we've got a foam insert. We've got some instructions on how to install it. Then let's turn this upside down. It comes very well packaged. We've got all our mounting hardware, an additional cable, and then an empty box. First inspections. Really nice matte finish to this tower cooler, guys. And I can already see that we've got 5 copper heat pipes that go into the copper heat plate at the bottom, which is going to make contact with your CPU. That's then going to dissipate the heat throughout this tower cooler. And then we've got the fan, which is a 120mm RGB fan that's going to be pushing air through one side of the actual radiator, through and out, and exhausting it through your exhaust fan at the rear of your case. A 4-pin PWM connection from the fan. This will go to a PWM header on our motherboard or connected into a fan hub if you've got one at the back of your case. We've then got a 5-volt addressable header. Really good to see this in terms of connectivity. Most modern motherboards, AM3 Plus, are going to have a 5-volt addressable header. That means things like Mystic Light, Asus Aura, and so on are going to be able to control the RGB for this particular fan, and it's going to be able to incorporate it into the rest of the fans in your build and have it controlled by your motherboard. The fan itself is just held on by these 2 clips on the side. You can simply undo each one of those. You've got an RGB connection, which is just here. You can go ahead and unclip that. There we go. The top of this particular cooler here has also got integrated RGB, and that's what this cable is here. And that will connect to the splitter off of the fan itself, which will mean we'll get illumination and RGB at the front, as well as from our fan as well. The height of our tower cooler here is 155mm, guys. So in most mid-tower cases, you're not going to have any issues whatsoever. What I would say is this cooler is slightly higher than the Freezer 34 and the Ventru V5 as well. So just make sure when you are looking, make sure if you are looking to actually pick up this, you do have sufficient room in order to mount it before it hits your glass side panel. One other thing is make sure to keep this plastic film over these heat pipes. You don't want any scuffs or marks in those until you actually mount it to your CPU. If you're not looking to connect the RGB to a 5-volt addressable header, but you still want to obviously power it, maybe you don't have enough 5-volt addressable headers on your motherboard, what you can do, which comes included within the accessory pack, is just connect the 5-volt addressable header to a SATA power connection, and then that will provide sufficient power not only to the fan for the RGB, but it will also power the RGB on the front of the tower cooler as well. Let's take a look at the accessory pack. What do you get in here? It's great to see that they've given you some included thermal paste. They've also given you your back plate that's going to be required as well. So this will go onto the back of your motherboard, and these are adjustable as well, dependent on whether you're running LGA 1700, 1200, LGA 1151, or potentially AM4 as well. The brackets, in order to mount, you've got Intel or AMD. They've also given you 2 additional clips. Let's say you wanted to purchase another one of these fans and you wanted one on the opposite side, then you could do push-pull on this small tower cooler as well. And then you've also got the different posts and the additional tension brackets as well that's going to be required, dependent on whether you're using AMD or Intel. So just coming back to the actual fan itself, guys, as we said, on face value, there's nothing special about this. It's just an RGB, ARGB fan. It's got these integrated little rubber grommets here, which will stop any vibrations, and a nice little touch as well. There's no center cap, so nothing for me to get frustrated on in terms of it looking out of place. The RPM that this fan can control at is anything from 600 to 1800 RPMs. Now, the really good thing about that is obviously you can control how noisy it wants to be. And at 600 RPM, it's anything from 15 decibels all the way up to around 25 decibels, which is still really, really quiet. Now, the other thing to note here is it looks like it's going to move quite a lot of air. And I was just looking at the actual specification there, and it actually says that it can move anywhere between 29.37 and 86 CFM, which is a huge amount of air. So when we're looking at something like a 5600 or something like a 12600 or 13600, when we're not going crazy in terms of the core count, we should be absolutely fine here. So we fast forwarded a little bit in time, guys. I needed a fresh trim and duty called with work. So I thought, what better time than to incorporate it into an actual build. So we're still going to use the same motherboard, but we've got a 5600X actually on this board already, and we are going to be installing this cooler on this motherboard as well. So I'll walk you through it step by step. Very, very straightforward, guys. What we're actually going to do is we're going to unscrew the 4 screws to our AMD backplate here. There's number 1, and we'll do the same for this one. There we go. Nice. Right. We then want to take our AMD mounting bracket. One side's a little bit thicker than the other, guys, and if we try and put it in this way, the screws is just going to push all the way in. There's no actual threads there. What we need to do is thread all 4 of these onto each one of the corners like this, and you want to make sure that it's not over tight, but until you can't go any further. So now they're nicely in, guys. The next important step is making sure our bracket is inserted in the correct orientation. Now we've got one hole up here, and then we've got another hole. The top hole is for AM2 and AM3, but we've got AM4, so we want to make sure that these posts go through this second hole, which is here. Now the other important thing is making sure that this bracket is angled in the correct way as well. So we want to make sure it goes on just like that. We can put our other one on. There we go. We can then take each one of our nuts, however you want to call them, and we can then proceed to tighten them down to make sure they're not going anywhere. And if we've done it right, guys, we should take our actual tower cooler, make sure it's orientated the correct way, and it should fit just between that hole there. There we are. We can then take these 2 spring-loaded screws. One goes in this side and one goes in this side. But before we do that, we need to actually make sure we take off this film, and we also apply some thermal paste as well. So in terms of thermal paste application, up to you guys. I like to just do a P in the middle. Never had any issues or anything like that. We can then remove this film. We just want to lower that down into position like so. What we can do then is take those 2 screws we were talking about before, and we'll tighten one side and then the other. Yeah, that's fine. We can then make sure that we actually orientate our RGB cable down there, and then we can pass it out the back and we can connect it to the daisy chain on the fan. But essentially, guys, really, really straightforward. It looks like it's making a really solid connection there as well. it looks quite nice. So what we'll do now, guys, is we'll attach our fan. We'll then get our PWM onto our CPU header. We'll attach our RGB to the actual RGB off here. And then I'll show you where to connect those on the motherboard as well. So the most common mistake I see, guys, is when we're actually applying the fan, they actually have the fan on where they're looking at the back of the fan and it's actually trying to draw air through the actual radiator rather than pushing it out so it can be exhausted out the back of the case. So make sure that when you're applying your fan, you're looking at the actual fan itself. That means it's going to be pushing air through the actual fin stack itself as well. The next thing is we want to make sure that our cables are as nicely managed as possible. So we want them coming out the back at the bottom as well. So essentially it wants to be applied just like that. What we can do then is we can take our clips. I'm doing this khaki-handed, but we'll see if we can do it. There we are. And all you got to do is put them into the bottom of the fan, pull back. And then essentially, guys, once you've got it into those two holes, just pull backwards. And it will clip around this side just here. And then that will mean that your fan isn't going anywhere. In terms of RGB, we've actually routed the RGB from the actual cooler itself down through the center, and then it's come out just at the back here. As we said, the actual fan itself has got a daisy chain off it, which is just here as well. So what we're looking to do is just connect the actual fan and the cooler together. There we go. And then we can hide that cable nicely under there. We've also then got a CPU header, which is just above to the left of this RAM slot here. And essentially what we're wanting to do is attach that onto there like that. So we have actually got a 5-volt addressable header, which is just here as well. So essentially, guys, I could have that just plonked onto there like that. Overall, guys, I'm really impressed with regards to how easy that is to actually install. Don't get me wrong, this mess here with regards to the cables. So if you are interested in picking up this cooler, guys, the S5C from Uphere, again, link will be down in the description below. As you can see, no problem installing it, 3-4 minutes, absolutely fine. You could also add another pool fan on this side if you've got plenty of room as well. So yeah, around £29.99, 30 quid, a good option to the V-True V5 or the Arctic Freezer 34 Esports. So depending on what kind of look you want, guys, but I don't think you're going to go wrong. I'm quite happy with this one, and I'm sure the customer will be as well. So guys, thank you very much. I wish you all the very best. If you've enjoyed the video, smash that like button. Don't forget to get subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.